Sarah Mitchell's military training had prepared her for 3 combat deployments, but not for a luxury baby store manager spitting in her face. As she stood there, 7 months pregnant, she realized some battles didn't require weapons, just unwavering dignity. The afternoon sun streamed to the glass facade of Baby First Luxe, illuminating rows of premium cribs and designer strollers. Sarah Mitchell walked through the automatic doors with the same purposeful stride she'd maintained through 15 years of Air Force service. At 42, her military posture remained impeccable, even as she adjusted to accommodate her 7-month pregnant belly. Sarah ran her hand protectively over her rounded abdomen, a gesture that still felt new despite having performed it countless times since learning she was expecting. After dedicating her prime years to serving her country, motherhood had seemed like a distant possibility until meeting David 2 years after retirement. Now, as a first-time mother at what doctors called advanced maternal age, she approached parenthood with the same methodical preparation she'd applied to military operations. "Just reconnaissance today," she murmured to herself, smiling at the military terminology that still peppered her everyday speech. Her mission: evaluate baby furniture before making any purchasing decisions. A young sales associate approached, her bright smile faltering momentarily as she assessed Sarah's practical maternity wear and sensible shoes, a stark contrast to the store's typical clientele of designer-clad mothers-to-be. "Welcome to Baby First Luxe," the associate said, quickly recovering her professional demeanor. "I'm Jenny. Can I help you find anything specific today?" "Just browsing cribs and safety equipment," Sarah replied with a direct efficiency that had served her well as a squadron commander. "I'd appreciate any recommendations on the safest models available." Jenny nodded, leading Sarah toward the premium crib section, unaware that this ordinary shopping trip was about to become anything but routine. Sarah examined a handcrafted oak crib with the analytical precision she once applied to aircraft maintenance reports. Her fingers traced the rounded edges, mind automatically calculating potential hazards and safety margins. "This one has excellent safety ratings," Jenny explained, "and it converts to a toddler bed later." "What about the recall history of the manufacturer?" Sarah asked, pulling out a small notebook where she compiled research on baby product safety. Jenny blinked, clearly unprepared for such specific questions. "I can check with my manager," she offered, seeming relieved when her walkie-talkie buzzed. After a brief conversation, her expression changed subtly. "I need to help another customer. Richard, our district manager, will assist you shortly." As Jenny hurried away, Sarah noticed the store's atmosphere shifting. Other employees began watching her from a distance, whispering behind perfectly manicured hands. Years of threat assessment training triggered her instincts. Something wasn't right. Richard Cooper appeared from the back office, his tailored suit and meticulously styled hair projecting authority. Everything about him screamed ambition and impatience. His eyes narrowed as they settled on Sarah, assessing her simple maternity dress and the worn leather purse slung across her shoulder. "Can I help you find something?" His tone suggested she might be in the wrong store altogether. "I'm evaluating cribs," Sarah replied evenly, particularly interested in safety certifications and materials. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Our clientele typically appreciates the aesthetic aspect as well." He gestured toward a $3,000 designer crib nearby. "This one's quite popular with our regular customers." "I'm more concerned with functionality than brand names," Sarah said, noting how Richard's gaze kept returning to her purse. "That's an unusual perspective for our store," Richard replied. "Most mothers who shop here understand the value of quality." Sarah felt her military bearing kick in automatically, spine straightening despite the added weight of her pregnancy. "Quality and price point aren't always correlated," she said, her voice calm but authoritative, the same tone she'd used with subordinates during high-pressure missions. Richard's demeanor cooled further. "I couldn't help noticing you've been examining merchandise quite thoroughly." His eyes flicked again to her purse. "Would you mind if I check your bag? Just store policy for certain customers." Several shoppers nearby paused, sensing conflict. Sarah recognized a tactical situation developing. She was being profiled and publicly challenged. "There's no such policy posted," Sarah stated, noting the position of security cameras and exits, a habit from military training. And I haven't done anything to warrant suspicion. Richard stepped closer, invading her personal space. A clear intimidation tactic. Perhaps you military types don't understand how these establishments work, he said, his voice low but carrying enough for nearby customers to hear. The pin on your jacket, that's military, right? Playing soldier doesn't exempt you from store policies. Sarah's hand instinctively moved to the small Air Force veteran pin on her collar, a gesture not lost on Richard, who smirked. And in your condition, he added, glancing pointedly at her pregnant belly, you should probably stick to more appropriate stores. Discount retailers might be more your speed. A small crowd had gathered now, watching the confrontation unfold. Sarah measured her breathing, employing the same techniques she'd used during combat situations. This wasn't Afghanistan, but the principles of maintaining composure under pressure remained the same. I'd like to speak with your supervisor, Sarah said calmly, pulling out her phone. Richard laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. I am the supervisor, sweetheart, and I think it's time we had a more private conversation about what you've been doing in my store. I haven't been doing anything except shopping, Sarah replied, one hand resting protectively over her belly. The baby kicked, as if responding to the increased tension. Richard gestured to two security guards who had materialized nearby. Let's continue this discussion in my office, he said, no longer bothering to mask his disdain. We can review the security footage together. Sarah assessed the situation with the cool detachment her combat training had instilled. Making a scene would serve no strategic purpose, especially in her condition. Lead the way, she said, maintaining eye contact with Richard. But I want it noted that I'm complying under protest. As they walked toward the back office, whispers followed them. Sarah overheard fragments. Shoplifting. But she's pregnant. Military pin. The store had become a battlefield of a different sort, reputation and dignity at stake, rather than life and limb. Richard's office was meticulously organized, with sales charts and fashion magazines arranged in perfect alignment. He pointed to a chair across from his desk. Sit. I prefer to stand, Sarah replied, recognizing the power dynamic he was attempting to establish. Suit yourself, Richard shrugged, settling into his ergonomic chair. Though in your condition, I have thought you won't take the weight off. Military stubbornness, I suppose. Sarah remained silent, waiting, patience under pressure, another skill honed through years of service. We've had a rash of thefts recently, Richard continued, leaning back. Designer baby clothes walk right out the door. Interestingly, they started around the same time you began visiting our store. This is my first visit, Sarah stated flatly. Richard's smile tightened. That's not what our records show. Someone matching your description, pregnant, military-looking, unfashionable, has been here several times. That's not me? Right, Richard scoffed. All you military wives look the same to me anyway. I'm not a military wife, Sarah corrected. I served 15 years myself. Lieutenant Colonel, United States Air Force. Something flickered across Richard's face. Surprise, perhaps annoyance at being corrected. Lieutenant Colonel of shopping at the wrong store, maybe. Look, just empty your purse and we can sort this out. Sarah remained motionless, not without proper cause or a police officer present. The standoff stretched for several tense seconds before Richard stood abruptly. You people think your service entitles you to special treatment. Let me make something clear. In my store, your rank means nothing. He circled the desk, invading her space again. Sarah didn't back away, though her instinct screamed to maintain distance. The baby kicked again, harder this time. You know what I think? Richard's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. I think you're using that uniform and that. He gestured dismissively at her pregnant belly as cover, playing the pregnant veteran card to avoid scrutiny. The security guard shifted uncomfortably by the door, clearly unsure about the situation. Richard noticed their hesitation, and his face flushed with anger. This is why my family never served, he spat. Why sacrifice for a country that lets people like you take advantage? Sarah remained silent, her expression neutral despite the insult to her service. Richard's frustration visibly mounted in the face of her composure. "Say something," he demanded, color rising in his cheeks. "I have nothing to say to you," Sarah replied quietly. "I'd like to leave now." Something snapped in Richard's expression. In one fluid motion, he leaned forward and spat directly onto Sarah's cheek. The saliva ran down her face as the room fell into stunned silence. "There's my response to your service," Richard whispered, triumph and disgust mingling in his voice. "Now get out of my store before I call the police." The saliva trickled down Sarah's cheek like a solitary tear. For a heartbeat, the office remained frozen in shocked silence. The security guard stared, mouths agape. Even Richard seemed momentarily stunned by his own action. Sarah didn't flinch, didn't raise a hand to wipe away the insult. Instead, with deliberate calm, she reached into her pocket and extracted a simple white handkerchief, monogrammed with USAF in the corner. She dabbed her cheek with military precision, her eyes never leaving Richard's face. "My apologies," Sarah said, her voice steady and controlled. "I should have introduced myself properly. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Mitchell, former squadron commander, 71st Rescue Squadron, retired after 15 years of service, including 3 combat deployments." She reached into her purse, slowly, so the security guards wouldn't misinterpret, and withdrew her military ID card, placing it on Richard's desk with a soft click. 4 Air Force Commendation Medals, 2 Bronze Stars, she continued, her voice gaining strength. "And now, expected my first child at 42 after doctors told me combat injuries might prevent pregnancy altogether." Richard's face had lost its flush of anger, uncertainty creeping into his expression. "I came here today," Sarah continued, "to purchase a crib for the child I never thought I'd have. Instead, I've been accused, profiled, insulted, and assaulted." She removed her phone from her pocket, her movements measured and calm. "I'm going to make a call now. Not to the police, though that would be justified. I'm calling Colonel James Warren, current base commander at Westfield Air Force Base." Richard's face paled. "That's not necessary." Sarah held up one finger in a gesture that had silenced airmen for years. Richard fell quiet instantly. "Colonel Warren is not only my former commanding officer, but the brother-in-law of your company CEO, Michael Blackwood. They served together before Michael built this retail chain." The security guards exchanged glances, slowly backing toward the door. Sarah dialed, placed the phone on speaker, and set it beside her military ID. "Warren," answered a crisp, authoritative voice. "Sir, it's Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell. I'm afraid I need your assistance with a situation involving baby First Lux." Colonel Warren's response was immediate and decisive. "Understood, Mitchell. Location: downtown Westfield branch. District Manager Richard Cooper's office." Richard lunged her phone, but Sarah sidestepped with a nimbleness that had surprised many during her military career. Despite her current pregnant state, "The same baby First Lux owned by Mike Blackwood?" Warren asked, his tone shifting. "Affirmative, sir." "Stay put. 20 minutes." The line went dead. Richard stared at the phone as if it were a grenade with the pin pulled. "Let's discuss this reasonably," he stammered, retreating behind his desk. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," Sarah replied calmly, "was yours. You mistook my appearance for weakness, my pregnancy for vulnerability, and my military service for something to mock rather than respect." 18 minutes later. The colonel was always early. The store's atmosphere shifted dramatically. Employees straightened as a commanding figure in civilian clothes, but with unmistakable military bearings strode through the entrance. Behind him came a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit that made Richards look off the rack by comparison. "That would be Colonel Warren," Sarah explained to Richard, whose complexion had gone ashen. "And I believe the gentleman with him is your CO, Mr. Blackwood." The office door opened without a knock. Colonel Warren's eyes immediately found the dried spittle still visible on Sarah's handkerchief, then fixed on Richard with glacial fury. "Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell. Status report," he said, not looking away from Richard. "Physical assault following discriminatory treatment, sir," Sarah replied. Michael Blackwood stepped forward, his expression thunderous. "Richard, outside. Now," As Richard was escorted out, Blackwood turned to Sarah. "Lieutenant Colonel, my deepest apologies for this unconscionable treatment. Rest assured, it will be addressed immediately." Within an hour, justice unfolded with military efficiency. Richard was terminated on the spot. Security footage confirmed Sarah's account. The CEO personally selected the finest crib in the store and arranged for immediate free delivery. Most significantly, Blackwood announced on the spot a new company-wide policy offering substantial discounts to all military families, with special programs for expectant military mothers, a program that will be named after Sarah. 1 month later, Sarah sat in her newly prepared nursery, arranging baby clothes in the dresser next to the beautiful oak crib, the same model she'd been examining when the confrontation began. The doorbell rang, and she opened it to find a delivery person with a large package from Baby First Lux. Inside was a handcrafted rocking chair with a card signed by Michael Blackwood, for the woman who reminded us what true strength looks like. The incident had sparked a national conversation. News coverage highlighted the challenges faced by pregnant veterans, a group often overlooked in both military and civilian support systems. Baby First Lux's new military family program was being implemented in retailers nationwide, and Sarah had been invited to consult on the initiative. As for Richard Cooper, he'd been ordered to complete community service at the local veteran center, where he was currently learning more about the sacrifices made by those he had so casually dismissed. Sarah rocked gently in her new chair, one hand resting on her belly. Her military career had taught her to fight when necessary, but also when to stand firm in quiet dignity. That lesson would be part of the legacy she passed to her child. "Your mom stood her ground," she whispered to her unborn baby. Not with violence or anger, but with a strength that comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for. If this story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. We respect every experience shared here. Have you witnessed pregnant veterans facing similar challenges or experienced discrimination based on service or pregnancy? Your experiences matter, and every comment helps raise awareness about the unique struggles and incredible strength of pregnant veterans. Subscribe for more powerful stories that honor those who serve both country and family.